Hey, everybody, welcome to a new episode of Walk in Faith. I'm sitting down with Matt Seeger to discuss his latest book, The God Squad, the Born Again San Francisco Giants, of 1978. And Matt, you have an amazing resume. I mean, BA from Cornell University, master's degree in magazine journalism from Syracuse University. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for, this opportunity.
Thanks for having me on, Craig. I really appreciate it.
No problem. So tell me, I mean, we spoke offline, but what was the inspiration behind, the Giants, the God Squad?
Okay, well, I am 71 years old. So in 1978, coincidentally, that is the year that I became a born again Christian. It's also the year that I focus on in this book. But what happened was around 1982, I had the opportunity to interview Gary Lavelle, who was one of the born again Christians on the Giants, and wrote up his article for a magazine. And at the same time, around 82, he and some of the other Giants on the born again Christians on the Giants were getting flack from the local media. Uh, Articles were written that they were too passive in their faith. If they gave up a home run, it was God's will, things like that. And so it really kind of irked me
Mm.
uh, that they were being written about that way. So I asked Gary, I said, this would be a good topic for a book. And he agreed, but we soon found neither of us had the time to devote to a book. So uh, I forgot about that whole idea until I retired from sports writing 3 years ago and was thinking about writing a book. And I thought, what about these God squatters? Are they still around? And sure enough, some of them were and are. And that led to writing the book.
Wow, that's so interesting. Interesting. And so you just retired recently as a sports writer. You must have covered, I mean, thousands and thousands of athletes and stories throughout your career.
Well, I kind of bookmarked my career, Craig. I started out as a sports reporter in Cortland, New York, uh, mostly doing high school sports. I ended up as a sports writer in Vacaville, California, pretty much doing high school sports. But in between that, I shuttled around different careers, some in journalism, but all the time throughout those 40 years, I was always trying to interview Christian athletes and writing freelance articles about them. So I did interview quite a few Christian athletes. Some names people would know: Gary Carter, who's
Yes,
Hall
yeah.
of Fame catcher with the New York Mets. I interviewed him. Uh, and several others, people would know. But that was that was something I was always interested in doing, was talking about their stories of faith as professional athletes.
Yeah, and like I said, earlier today, we share a common sort of goal there. I mean, that's what I love to do too, is talk to athletes, celebrities about their journey of faith. So the God Squad, because I'm sorry, I was born in 1980, so I wasn't familiar with the God Squad. But tell me about that. How did that come together, and what was the temperament in baseball at the time? And you mentioned earlier too how these two reporters, they spoke negatively about the God Squad. And was that common in the world of sports, but also in media to criticize people when they're outspoken about their faith?
Sure. Well, you have to understand all of this happened on the heels of the Jesus Revolution, which had swept up from Southern California in the early 70s and then into Northern California, where the Giants were. And so it should have been no big surprise that a lot of the Giants had come to faith. But by 1978, you had 9 or 10 of these guys who were professing their faith. So it was a new phenomenon for the media. They had not encountered this before. Prior to this, it was very uncommon, at least in baseball, for the Christian ball players to talk about their faith. They kept it very much under the vest. And all of a sudden, you had these born again guys praising God after a game for the ability He had given them and for their newfound peace that they had. Um, and the reporters didn't really know what to do with it. Um, and now in 1978, just to understand that season, the Giants flourished as a team, and they were in first place for the majority of the season until they had a September swoon and finished in third place, but they were ahead of the Dodgers and the Cincinnati Reds, two of the juggernauts of National League Baseball. And so the whole town got swept up in this, and the God Squad was a big part of that. And so fans didn't mind them talking about Jesus. The reporters didn't mind because they were winning.
Mm.
But what happened in 1979, the Giants got off to a terrible start, and the reporters, to sell newspapers, began to blame the Giants, the born again Giants, for losing and saying, well, they only care about God now. And if they lose, they just shrug it off as it was his will, and they're more passive. And so you had a couple of reporters, in particular, Lowell Cohn and Glenn Dickey of the San Francisco Chronicle, with this. Glenn Dickey was very anti-God, very vindictive. He said the Giants should break up that clique of born-again Christians, trade some of these guys away. Lowell Cohn, on the other hand, was a satirist, and he was equal opportunity. He satirized everybody and anything. So I don't think that he had any real hatred toward the born-again guys, but he didn't understand them very much. And part of that was his culture. He's Jewish. I'm Jewish. I should say, just for the record, I'm a Jewish believer in Jesus. But I understand why Lowell had trouble understanding these born again guys. And so he wrote a column saying, can Satan save the Giants?
Oh my
And
God.
what he proposed was, since they were not doing real well in winning with God on their side in 1979, perhaps one of them should sell their soul to the devil. And he was kidding. It was tongue in cheek. He doesn't even believe in the devil. But of course, the born again Christians were not very happy with that. And a lot of the fans were not very happy with that, the Christian fans. And it just exploded into an ongoing controversy between the media and the God Squatters.
Well, yeah. So what was their response? I mean, that article alone, or just the comment that I would sell my soul to win games, or to think that my soul is for sale. I know it's tongue in cheek, but what was their
Yeah.
response?
Well, very interesting. One of the God Squatters, a guy named Johnny Lemaster, Lowell Cohn really liked Johnny, and they had a really good relationship. But Lowell said after he wrote that article and they were on the team bus, Johnny and he were sitting together, and Lowell said Johnny wasn't angry with him. Johnny just was disappointed and couldn't understand it. And Lowell said that really got to him because he and Johnny had been very close friends, and Johnny just said to him, Lowell, I don't understand. How could you write that about us selling our soul to the devil? And Lowell really had no answer, and there was just a kind of this thaw in the relationship. Not that it killed it, but Lowell realized he had stepped into the midst of something. And Lowell had a very interesting quote. He wrote his memoirs called Gloves Off after he retired from being a columnist. And he said that he realized he was not just covering a baseball team, he was covering a profound religious experience that was happening with the Giants.
Wow.
And so he recognized that he had stepped into kind of a religious debate, which was very foreign to him as just a sports reporter.
That's
Yeah.
powerful. That's
Yeah.
powerful. And I asked you, earlier, and I didn't realize within the book there's a chapter on this, but have you seen a correlation between believers in sports or athletes versus non-believers? If I don't want to say their success, but if, they're at peace, which would allow them to perform better, or just to see, do they win more games? How do they perform on and off the field when
Yeah.
they have a relationship with Jesus Christ versus a non-relationship with Jesus Christ?
Absolutely. Now, as I said before, it's hard to prove this, but you can see definitely correlations because so many factors go into a baseball player's performance from year to year, besides their faith. Other factors go into play. Just their age, as they get older, they may not perform as well. Uh, their position in the batting order could affect things, the quality of their teammates. However, if you talk to the players and look at some of their statistics, to me, it's pretty clear. For example, Bob Knepper, who was a pitcher on the God Squad, he became a Christian in May of 1978. He went on in 1978 to have a tremendous year, probably the best year he ever had. He won 17 games, pitched a number of shutouts. And Bob would tell you that he was much more at peace once he became a Christian. And as he told me, he said, I knew that despite no matter what happened on the field, my wife still loved me, God still loved me, and I could go out and perform without great pressure or expectations. And I think it freed up a lot of players to do that. They were much more at peace, and if it kept them from the highs and lows of the baseball season and the slumps and the peaks and valleys that are natural in any long baseball season. It kept them on an even keel. A lot of them will tell you that.
And you can apply that to just the average life. I mean, the ebbs and
Sure.
flow, the storms and the adversity. I mean, for me, when I'm not in the Word, I'm not at peace, right? And it's sort of like, I don't realize it or recognize it the first day, but over time, a few days into it, I realize that something is not right. And that's because I'm not in His Word. I'm not in a daily
Yep.
relationship with Jesus Christ. And then I perform better, right? There's less distraction. So, to see it, especially at that level of a baseball player, an athlete, or an actor, or whoever you want to, look at that has a relationship with Jesus Christ, there is this sense of peace, this sense of joy, this sense of fulfillment. That is, we all have access to that. And I
Yeah.
think a book like with you, the God Squad, I don't plan on playing baseball anytime soon. No offense to baseball players. I wasn't cut out to play baseball, but a book like that, I can read it and I can reflect on my personal relationship with Jesus Christ, but also too how important it is to be outspoken about our faith, regardless on what platform we have, whether it's social
Sure.
media or it's in the office. We should be proclaiming the gospel. We should be letting people know how God has impacted and inspired my life, regardless if we get criticized by the media or by anyone. This is what we're called to do, is to bring people to Jesus. And in this case, you're doing it through your book, and the Giants did it through, their gift of baseball. And I really commend you for that. So what would you say to athletes or people out there that are Christian, that are believers, that feel like they're going to be silenced the same way
Right.
God Squad was, in essence, almost silenced?
Sure. Well, Craig, for one thing, I believe that the God Squatters are real pioneers in that respect, in that they're the ones who took the hit for expressing their faith at a time when it just wasn't done uh, very much in professional sports, certainly not in baseball. And they took a tremendous hit for it. Bob Knepper, who I mentioned before, was infamously misquoted, a fabricated quote after he gave up a home run and the manager came to took him out of the game. Supposedly on the mound, the manager said, "What's happening?" And what was happening with that pitch, and Knepper said, "Oh, it was God's will to give up the home run." He never said that. I have a whole chapter on that. But these were the kind of stories that spread nationally. So you had guys like Dick Young of the New York Daily News, Peter Gammons of the Boston Globe, writing about this fabricated quote, spreading these false stories, and that haunted Knepper for years and years. So, like I say, these guys took the hit. They were outspoken. But what happened is, even within the Giants, if you follow them uh, into the late 80s, when they had another cadre of born again Christians, which I called God Squad 2 in my book, all of a sudden the press was a lot more open to them expressing their faith. And I think there that has happened. And at least in the world of sports, if you tune in to the NFL or some of these other sports, these guys are a lot quicker to open up and talk about their faith. Certainly, a guy like Tim Tebow was very outspoken about his faith, and there's many others. And so I think that uh, there's less to be fearful about. Not that that should sway you one way or the other, but I think there's more avenues now for the professional athletes to speak about their faith. Locally, we have a quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers named Brock Purdy, uh, very open about his faith. And he gets, they quote him. He'll, he'll talk about it either on live television or sometimes the newspapers will report it. Another prominent example in our era is Paige Beckers, the University of Connecticut women's basketball player, very outspoken about her faith. And they don't get the kind of pushback that the God Squad used to get. So I think I think the God Squad has opened up avenues. I think players need not worry about what people are going to think, and they have a clear avenue to talk about Jesus now.
That's interesting. It's something that I should reflect on too, because I didn't know that. I mean, it gives me the ability to be open about my faith, but I do have to sort of, just give honor to the God Squad to say, if it wasn't for the God Squad, I wouldn't have this opportunity to speak to these athletes and these celebrities about their journey of faith or their relationship with Jesus Christ. But to your point earlier too, there was that, I don't know his name, I should, but he's Catholic and they won the Super Bowl last year, and
Oh
he was
yeah,
the kicker.
Harrison Butker, the
Harrison
kicker.
Butker, yes,
Yep.
and he was outspoken, and they went after him, but in the end, the repercussions or what they were demanding, it didn't happen. He was able to
Right.
continue to work and continue to play, and I know he's on the team this season, but I wonder if they even know that it's because of the God Squad. And maybe they will after they read your book, but it's because of the God Squad that gave them the ability to speak openly about their faith without being canceled. Maybe they'll pursue or they'll threaten to cancel them, but in the end, they remain on the team. They remain outspoken about our faith. And I think we all need to carry our cross regardless of what the repercussions are, because this is what we're called to do. And I don't think we should hide from it because, I mean, Jesus warned us that they're going to come after us and they continuously do regardless of what, platform we're on.
Yeah. Interesting with Harrison Butker, I just watched the latest Kansas City Chiefs game, and the game came down to the Chiefs were down 2 points and down to the last seconds of the game and the last play of the game. And who should come out to win the game for them but Harrison
Oh,
Butker
wow.
kicked like a 50-yard field goal, and they won by 1 point.
That's
And
great.
so I think a guy like him, his performance is definitely aided by his faith.
Agree.
Because to stay cool, calm, and collected in that situation, it takes some spiritual uh, uh, presence, God's presence in your life.
I agree.
Yeah.
Last question before we go. So when Babe Ruth, when he held up that bat, right, and he hit that home run, was he holding it up to heaven or Jesus Christ, or was that just, to the sky? What was that?
Well, here's my take. I don't know that Babe was a particularly spiritual person, but the big controversy on that one, Craig, is it was against the Chicago Cubs in the World Series. And uh, speaking of heckling, he took an enormous amount of heckling, not for his faith, just because he was so good. And so what was happening? The Chicago Cubs in the dugout were unmercifully heckling him and swearing at him and saying all sorts of things while he was up at the plate. And Babe got a little tired of it, and so he pointed with his bat. Now, the debate is, did he point to the stands to say, I'm going to, out in right center field, I'm going to hit a home run there, or was he pointing at the pitcher? And if
Mm.
you look at the replays, it looks to me like he's pointing to the stands. And the very next pitch, he hit a home run right where he was pointing.
As a
And
kid,
then,
every time we played baseball or wiffle ball, I still do it now. My son, I point up. He has no idea what the reference is, but I'm always pointing up. And I'm gonna say he was pointed up to the heavens. That's what I'm gonna say.
okay, possibly he was, but that
Man,
that is an
thank you.
iconic
Thank you
moment in
so much.
baseball.
I look forward to just letting people know more about your book and finding out more about. Where can people find their book? I know we said Amazon, but where else is it available?
It's available at all the retailers online, Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble, thrift books. I should point out, if you go to Amazon, there's two versions of the book. One has 13 pages of color photos supplied by the Giants. The other has the same photos, but they're in black and white. If you want to save a little money, you can get the black and white version.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. I advise people to pick up the book or at least be inspired by our conversation and not to be afraid to be outspoken about our faith and our relationship with Jesus Christ, because it doesn't just inspire and impact other people, but it really moves people to a relationship. And regardless of what the repercussions are, we need to be outspoken the way the God Squad was. So, Matt, thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Walk in Faith. Always remember, you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through words and actions. God bless you.